What is going on? I want to welcome you from Half Court. I am your host, Sean Murphy, joined as always by my Rock, by the Dirk Nowitzki to my Steve Nash, which turned into Jason Kidd, which turned into Rajon Rondo, which turned into Dennis Smith Jr., which turned into Luka Doncic. Troy Sergey. Troy. I know I missed some Mavericks point guards in there, but did you like that better than the other reference we've been making?
Yeah, but I'm a big Devin Harris fan, and you forgot Devin Harris.
I was wondering, dude. I'm gonna level with you. I'm gonna level with you, Devin Harris. I remember like at one point he was seen as like one of the next best point guards in the league. Like he was like in that conversation.
Yeah.
Like, not like the best, but like in like that top tier or top echelon of upcoming.
He was a
point
top
guards.
10 point guard towards the bottom half of top 10.
Yeah.
At least one point of his career. Probably with New Jersey more than Dallas. But.
Yeah, 100%. I remember like that being a big thing, and then all of a sudden, you know, obviously they go and get Jason Kidd. Good move. I'd say not a bad move.
Great move. Great move.
Doesn't it make you feel old, by the way, that like guys that we were watching as kids are now getting NBA coaching jobs? Like 3 point guards that I loved watching as a kid are all head coaches in the league. Like,
right. It makes you think too, like when we're having kids ourselves, like, will Damian Lillard be a coach? Will, you know, like guys like that. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I just thought of a really fun question just because of that. I'm just throwing this in there. I'm throwing an audible. Which NBA player right now do you think would make the best head coach on an NBA team?
The best head coach.
Yeah. Current player that would make the best head coach.
I guess like the first thought is like, you know, like KD or LeBron, right? Mm-hmm. But I'm trying to think actually.
I don't think LeBron would be a
basketball
good coach.
IQ.
Yeah, I don't think LeBron would be a good coach. I think like, and I don't mean that as like an insult. I just like he knows the game, and like I think he really could do it if he wanted to, but like I mean, there's no secret he wants to be an owner. You know what I mean? So I mean, I think that's gonna be. I think he'll be a better owner than MJ.
Sure.
But when I think of players right now, I think of Rajon Rondo.
I think Jason Tatum. Oh, he's mine. Jason Tatum's mine.
Why Jason Tatum? That's interesting.
Just he has a high basketball IQ. That's kind of what I'm basing this off of, is high basketball IQ.
That's fair. That's
all
just
I'm basing it
interesting.
off of.
No, that's interesting. I was thinking older players, and you went the opposite direction. I respect it.
I was strictly thinking basketball IQ.
Troy, I am not criticizing your take. I'm just saying I just thought it was interesting. Interesting isn't bad. Anyway, welcome to Half Court. Reach every week. Troy and I sit down and talk all things basketball.
No.
Oh,
you got to answer that question for yourself.
I said Rajon Rondo.
But I thought you had another one too.
Oh, man. Okay. Yeah. If I got to think of another one, if you're making me think of another one, I'll think of it. You know what? CJ McCollum just voted. Go. Chris Paul too. Like Chris
Paul would be a good one.
Yeah, Chris Paul would be a really good coach. Yeah. Especially like, you know, I could see Chris Paul like 5 years out of the league, or like I could even see him being like a Derek Fisher where he's like fresh out of the league and just getting a coaching job, except being good, unlike Derek Fisher. But anyway, that's a whole other, you know, Derek Fisher. Maybe don't do the Derek Fisher model of sleeping with ex-players, you know, wives. Anyway, welcome to From Half Court. Each and every week we talk all things NBA basketball. If you like that, be sure to like this on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, share with your friends and loved ones. Also, be sure to follow us on Spotify, iTunes, all those podcast services you love. You can follow me on Twitter at Sean Halfcourt, and you can follow Troy at Troy Sergey 44. Troy, you're like the only person I memorized their Twitter handle, so feel the love there, 100%. But anyway, Troy, we got for not a lot of basketball happening, we have a decent amount to talk about.
We definitely do. Yeah.
And did I mention I miss basketball? I know I did. I mentioned it last week. I miss it, dude. I am salivating.
I miss it too. Yeah.
Like,
I'm just looking forward to like what we're going to talk about on the podcast when the season actually starts. Like there's going to be like, there's so many competitive teams right now that we're going to have to probably do report cards on teams we've already done in the off season, in the mid season or the quarter way season. Right. Like,
oh yeah,
it's just going to be, there's so many teams where my eye is on this year that it's just going to make each game so fun. Fun.
Well, and dude, like the thing is like the storylines, they're going to be coming quick. Like, you know, we still haven't gotten any resolution in Philly. We still don't know what's going on with Ben Simmons. We still don't know, you know, fully what it's going to be like in Boston. Like they're a total wild card. You know what I mean? Like, you know, the rookies alone, like not just because I'm a Pistons fan, but the Jalen Green, Cade Cunningham debate, watching that Rookie of the Year race is going to be super interesting. You know, like there's just so much that I look to and I'm just like, man, it's going to be a great season. I just miss basketball, man. Like, yeah, we have football starting, you know, in about a week and a half, 2 weeks. And, you know, that'll be a little bit of a palate cleanser. It'll feel good. But, you know, there's only one Detroit team I actually have fun watching lose, and that's my Pistons, not the Lions. That doesn't bring me joy. So, you know,
Can you tell our audience what I texted you last Saturday?
Yeah, I'm just sitting there, and you're just like, why is it exactly that you root for the Lions? Is it because it's a hometown thing? And I'm like, yeah, pretty much. Like, that's pretty much about it, because you and I just both acknowledge there's not really much of a better reason. You know what I mean?
Right.
But hey, you're losing Aaron Rodgers a year from now, so I guess look who's talking. But anyway, Troy's like, ouch. Hey, Jordan Love, who knows? But hey, that's from half yard line,
half
whatever.
Field.
Yeah, from half field, whatever that, from half gridiron.
Half red zone.
Yeah, whatever that is. I think there'll be a cooking show before we do a football podcast. But anyway, we could go on and on about that. But Troy, let's dive into the news, shall we? Troy, there was a little bit of a free agency situation this week. If you don't know, Rajon Rondo was traded from the Clippers to the Grizzlies, which brought Eric Bledsoe to Clip City. Which, by the way, the fact that the Clippers were able to flip Rajon Rondo, I mean, granted they had to trade back Patrick Beverley as well, but to bring in Eric Bledsoe over Rajon Rondo, that's a significant upgrade, especially what we saw from Rajon Rondo ever since he joined the Clippers. Like, I think there's been this sense that Rajon Rondo is like a great playoff point guard, which like he does elevate in the playoffs, but he was disappointing this year, man. I'm gonna level with you. I mean, it just looks like he's on the downturn. But maybe we could be proven wrong, because he was bought out by the Grizzlies and he will now fill the final roster spot for the Los
Angeles Lakers.
Very good, Troy. The Los Angeles Lakers. Now, Troy, you sent me a text today, earlier today, just talking about this move, or insinuating about this move. And you said the Nets are a better team, but the Lakers have some depth, bro. And I kind of want you to touch on that a little bit. You know, like what sticks out about this move? I mean, obviously the depth. You know what I mean? Like that definitely adds some depth to the point guard spot. But what do you like about this move?
Yeah, I think like you said, I mean, it's as simple as adding depth, right? And I think when I look at basketball, when I look at games, the long duration of an NBA single game, your reserves matter. And I just like what the Lakers are doing of having a long duration type player like Rondo, who can step in and not give you 30 minutes a game, but give you maybe 14 tops, maybe 12, 13, and come in there and do that. And I love Carmelo Anthony, who's ring chasing. I mean, this is maybe his last year in the league. Who knows? I like that move. I like Malik Monk a lot. Huge on him. And of course, LeBron James. Not talking about the depth anymore, but I'm just talking about the roster as a whole. And I just see in a single 48-minute basketball game, I see the Lakers having guys on the floor who can put the ball in the hole, who can make great plays. I'll see a lot of playmakers, and I'm excited to see what this Lakers team can do. But at the end of the day, when you're looking at strictly talent, yes, the Nets are by far the better team.
Right.
But I think the Lakers are in somewhat of a good position. I'm still somewhat scratching my head along with you with the Russell Westbrook trade, but I don't know. I'm somewhat excited to watch this Lakers team play this year.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, listen, I think you bring up a lot of good points of, the amount of depth that this team was able to add in a very short period of time was, I mean, let's just call it what it is. It was impressive, right? I mean, they quickly went from a team that, that had some real questions of how much they would truly be able to contend, what this situation was going to look like. And now you're looking at a team that, from top to bottom has names that goes, okay, that's a player. You know what I mean? I'm not as impressed as you are. And it's not to say that it's not a good bench, because it is a pretty good bench. I'm not going to lie to you. I think a lot of these guys can come in short bursts and give you some decent minutes and give you something. You know what I mean? The question is how much and for how long, right? Because this, we keep touching on this. This team is old. And sure, like the final year of Jordan, like winning an NBA championship, that team was pretty old too. Like these two rosters would be up there as the oldest teams ever won an NBA championship. That is a thing. And so, with that Bulls team, I have less reserve on that because, they were able to stay healthy, whereas this team, you have LeBron James, who has missed significant time 2 out of the past 3 seasons. Don't forget about that. And also Anthony Davis, who, let's be honest, struggles to stay healthy pretty much every single year.
Big time.
Right? So
big time.
And so even though you have Russell Westbrook, who's like a marathon man, he can go out there and he can play a ton of minutes. I mean, listen, he's getting older. Who's to say with his style of play? I mean, he's certainly not getting at lower risk for injury, right? And now you have all these older guys on your bench that, who's to say a hamstring injury or a simple calf pull, like there are things that can certainly pull that down. And honestly, like, I don't really see Rajon Rondo getting much to any playing time, to be honest with you. Maybe not even till like the end of the season or the playoffs. Like, I think that is a guy that is solely like, it's kind of like what Kendrick Perkins was, like kind of his final years in the league, where like he didn't play, but he was on championship teams. He was kind of like you used him as that locker room guy to be there and help establish that championship culture. Because remember, Rajon Rondo was part of that Lakers team that brought it back. You know what I mean? He was part of that bubble team that won the championship. So,
and that Celtics team that brought it back in 2007, 2008.
100%. But this ain't that spring chicken anymore. This is that rooster that's walking around with a cane.
And I think how you play these guys, I think how you utilize them will be the key to the Lakers' success or downfall. How you utilize these vets.
Right.
Not talking about Rondo specifically, but just the whole roster. How you play bench guys matters, and how you don't play them matters too. So
100%. I mean, listen. I mean, it's overall. I mean, listen. Like, let's running down the roster, right? Costas Antetokounmpo. This is just going alphabetical order, so I'm not listing this from starting a lineup or anything. You got Costas Antetokounmpo, Carmelo Anthony, Trevor Ariza, Kent Bazemore, Devontae Kakak, I don't think that's a guy that's probably a two-way player, I'd imagine. Anthony Davis, Wayne Ellington, Marc Gasol, Taylor Horton-Tucker, Dwight Howard, LeBron James, Wesley Matthews, Malik Monk, Kendrick Nunn, Russell Westbrook. I mean, there's a lot of guys on this list that can play basketball. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think ultimately, I think you're going to see Kendrick Nunn is really going to be that second point guard. I mean, Rajon Rondo.
Yeah, I like Nunn.
Yeah, there's probably not a better third string point guard than Rajon Rondo as far as the value that he can bring to a championship team. So overall, for that move, absolutely solid. But there are guys on this roster, specifically, I think there's going to be guys like Trevor Ariza or Wayne Ellington, like guys that are just, let's just call it how it is. They are old, and I just don't see, people were like, oh, I really love that Trevor Ariza move, and I'm like, dude, like
you're not going to see him on the court.
Again, gun to your head, where did he play last year?
Yeah, Rockets. No, I don't think so. I do think it's a cool storyline, though, that one of Kobe's Lakers teammates is on this current Lakers team.
That is awesome.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That is a cool storyline. Don't get me wrong, but I mean, that's probably all he's bringing to the table is that cool storyline. You know what I'm saying? So, and here's the thing. I love Trevor Ariza. He was one of my favorite players to watch, when I was younger, just in the sole fact that he was just one of those solid, dependable 3-and-D guys that would just go out there and play hard every single night. And that's what he gives you. But, that's kind of harder to do when you're, for a lack of better terms, getting kind of ancient. So I'm interested to see what he's going to be able to give going forward. And that's going to be the storyline to me for the Lakers. Ultimately, if LeBron and Anthony Davis and Russell Westbrook can stay healthy, and if they can gel together, then, the sky's the limit. But, there's also a chance that won't happen. And so, and as you said, ultimately, that Brooklyn Nets team is still really good. And so if they're both healthy, I still don't think this puts them over the line, but certainly a good guy to have in the locker room. Right. Yeah, I don't think there's much more to say on that situation. Congrats, Rajon Rondo. I will say one thing that bummed me out about it was that this reports suggested that this last roster spot could have gone to Isaiah Thomas. But Rajon Rondo's release kind of canceled that out. And I released a video on Monday as the time this releases. About Isaiah Thomas and how the Boston Celtics screwed it over. So if you haven't seen it, go check it out. I was really proud of that one and how it turned out.
It's worth the watch, everyone.
Yeah. One of the saddest stories in the NBA, probably ever. But anyway, that's a whole other conversation. Anyway, speaking of sad stories, Troy, out of ESPN, Rachel Nichols, over at The Jump, ESPN's The Jump has been canceled, effective immediately. And Rachel Nichols, longtime NBA reporter, someone that has been prominent in ESPN's coverage in basketball for years. They have her on contract for 2 more years. And she essentially won't be used on ESPN television going forward. This after she was, where a video leaked of her in the bubble, essentially complaining that Maria Taylor, former ESPN employee now working for NBC Sports, took her gig as the host of the finals pre-show, where Nichols said, "I wish Maria Taylor all the success in the world. She covers football. She covers basketball. If you need to give her more things to do because you are feeling pressure about your crappy long-time record on diversity," which, by the way, I know personally from the female side of it, go for it. Just find it somewhere else. You're not going to find it from me or taking my thing away. Which, when that came out, people did not love it. Troy, real quick, we're gonna have to take a break here in a second. But Troy, what are your thoughts on the Rachel Nichols situation?
Definitely disappointed. Definitely a little bit sad for multiple different reasons. I think Rachel did, handle herself well with as far as just her profession with NBA players. I loved, her questions. Just having her interview LeBron James after that 2020 finals in the bubble was pretty cool. Just a lot of cool Rachel Nichols memories over the years. And I liked her little moderation skills when Kendrick Perkins and Stephen A would go at it on the jump. It's too bad, she's being let go, but of course you can't be making statements like that. You can't be, devaluating and your view of someone being lesser than who they are based on the color of their skin, and that racial overtone in her voice. You can kind of hear it with that kind of position, that kind of leadership in that role that she's in. You can't be making statements like that. And I just hear a lot of racial overtone in that. And it's unfortunate, especially with a league with, like you said, before we got started here, a league of primarily, African-American players in the NBA and NFL. So I'm disappointed, but unfortunately, you just can't be saying stuff like that.
Yeah, the way the story leaked, and the way that this story came out, and just the leaked audio of it definitely had some Donald Sterling undertones to it. Obviously, didn't say anything nearly as bad as what Donald Sterling said. Both not okay. Don't really want to be on the record saying either of those things, but at the end of the day, I ultimately don't think this is the end of Rachel Nichols. I think she's a super prominent figure in NBA media, and I don't think that's going to change. Sure. Whether what she does is on her own or whether she lands somewhere else, we will see. But ultimately, I don't think she truly has hate in her heart. I just, it's hard to tell, right? But ultimately, I hope whatever happens from here, hopefully she can learn from it. And, Maria Taylor is a really successful and really talented anchor, and got there despite a lot of the hate and oppression and things that she's had to face. So, 100% just disheartening to see that kind of stuff. But hey, you know what? Good on ESPN for trying to, for holding her accountable for it. And I personally hope that they get another show covering NBA basketball, because I loved The Jump. I loved that show. So seeing it go away is sad, but ultimately, at the end of the day, the brand was probably permanently tarnished from that situation. But with that, before we get into the topic of the show, we are going to take a quick break on our end, and we're going to be talking about the Atlanta Hawks right about now. And we back. Troy, today's topic of the show, our next stage of getting out our report cards, getting out our grading books, undusting our rubrics, is the Atlanta Hawks. Eastern Conference finalist, Atlanta Hawks. Now, Troy, I'm going to level with you. I thought this team was going to be fun going into this season. I was expecting an 8th seed. I was expecting a fun play-in run for them. I was not expecting what we got. I don't know about you, but they completely flipped my expectations of what they ended up being. Just absolutely insane. So let's go through some of these transactions and kind of how we got to where we ended up, right? First, the key signings that they made in the off season was they brought in Bogdan Bogdanovic, which I'm not sure if you remember, Troy. Bogdan Bogdanovic was supposed to be a member of the Milwaukee Bucks. He was supposed to be on that Bucks team. Yeah. Do you remember the whole snafu of what happened of there's supposed to be a sign and trade with the Kings and the Bucks, and then for whatever reason,
sounds familiar, but I'm not recalling the details. Yeah. Go ahead.
But for whatever reason, the deal completely fell through. Bogdan was supposed to join this Milwaukee Bucks team, which, by the way, if that Bucks team had Bogdan Bogdanovic, that would have been unfair. Like with how good that Bucks team ended up being, that would have been absolutely unfair. They had the Bucks had Dante DiVincenzo. He was supposed to be getting traded to Sacramento. Like that was finalized. Like as close to finalized as possible. And then he had to awkwardly come back and play for the Bucks after getting traded. So that was fun. Good reminder there. They drafted Okongwu in the first round. They traded for Daniil Gallinari, which Daniil Gallinari is a stud. He might be on my list of.
Love Gallinari.
He might be. I was like, you were like lagging it out a little bit there. I was like, and I was like, but yeah,
I love Gallinari. He was on the Nuggets originally and part of that Carmelo Anthony trade to New York and played some serviceable minutes. Or other way around. I'm sorry. He was with New York and that got traded to Denver.
He balled out in Denver. People forget. He was good for them.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah, in my opinion, one of the more underrated players in this league. So for the Hawks to be able to go out and get Bogdanovich and Daniil Gallinari, and then on top of that, they signed Rajon Rondo in the offseason as well, which at the time looked like a really solid move, added some veteran leadership. It looked like, okay, this team's ready to make a push for the playoffs. And then they came out of the gates and they sucked. I don't know if you remember, Troy, but they started the season at 14-20.
I do remember that, yes.
Which ended up with firing coach Lloyd Pierce and appointing Nate McMillan as the interim head coach, which, seeing that he went 27-11 with that same roster, I'd say turned out pretty well.
I'd say so too. I mean, just not even the regular season run, but the playoff run was by far the absolute most impressive thing I've seen in a while with a playoff team run that you didn't have high expectations for.
Oh yeah.
Go Hawks.
Yeah, and not only that, but also, they also were able to bring in. They traded Rondo to the Clippers during the trade deadline, which brought back Lou Williams. A couple of second-round draft picks, and so now they had Lemon Pepper Lou alongside Trae Young, brought in some solid bench scoring, which, by the way,
Lemon Pepper Lou.
That trade turned out to be a steal, like 100% a steal, highway robbery, if you will. So Troy, if you had to give the Hawks a grade for this year, what would it be, and why is it an A+?
Oh, this year? Yes, A+. I would probably say an A- if they didn't go to the Eastern Conference Finals, but A+ because they did. Just making that team, putting pieces around Trae Young is what ultimately put him over the hump, right? And I think so many times we've talked about this on this podcast countless amount of times. How tragic is it when we see a star that on a team and a GM cannot find pieces to go along with it? How tragic is that? It's a story of so many different great stars that never could get out of the bubble. And to think that, I think we talked about the Cade Cunningham, Jalen Green comparison. Well, there's forever going to be a comparison of Trae Young and Luka Doncic. And as we can probably say, yes, Luka is the better player, but Trae Young has gone further than Luka has in the playoffs. So the fact that he's clutch like that he can perform on such a high level. And man, I think this past year is just the beginning for Trae Young. It's his coming out party. Would you say?
Oh, 100%. And listen, man, you can say whatever you want about the Trae Young, Luka Doncic deal. It's important for people to point out it wasn't, again, this gets lost in translation. It was not a straight 1-for-1 trade. The Hawks also received an extra first-round pick. So the Hawks got Trae Young and a first-round pick. So that is important to point out. And at the end of the day, I think they're both superstars. I don't think it's one or the other. They are both superstars in this league. It's just Luka might be like, if Luka's 1, Trae's 1A. You know what I mean? I think at the end of the day, what they do on the basketball court is completely different. And listen, if Trae Young's going out there giving you as dominant of performances as he is, then at the end of the day, I'll take it. I will absolutely take it, especially if he's going out.
I don't think any Hawks fans are complaining, are they?
No, if they are, they better not. Listen, if I have a point guard who, mind you, his third season going out and averaging 25 points a game with 9.4 assists, 43% shooting is just absolutely insane, especially when, in your third season, you go from a franchise that hasn't seen the playoffs in years to making a deep Eastern Conference Finals run your first time in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Mind you, having to go on the road, having the other team have home court advantage
in a game
both
7
series. Yeah. And you have the ice in your veins to go out and push both series as far as you do and ultimately, come out on top. And I mean, people forget, like, the Knicks were heavily favorited in that first series. Like, people are like, oh, like the Hawks, that'll be a fun series, but the Knicks are going to win because the Knicks are a better defensive team. No, the Hawks quickly proved that wrong. In fact, I don't think I've seen a series looked more lopsided after just one game. And like they only won by 2, but like when Trae Young like shushed the crowd at the Garden, like, not to overreact from what we saw, but I thought at that point I didn't think there was a chance the Knicks were going to win that series. Trae Young.
It was fun. It was so fun.
Is Trae Young the biggest villain in the league now?
No, I don't think so.
He became one of the biggest villains
LeBron
in the
James
league,
will
though.
always be the biggest villain. He's one of the, yes, but I think LeBron James will always be the biggest villain in the league.
Really? You think LeBron's still the biggest villain? I feel like Kevin Durant's the biggest villain. I think Brooklyn's kind of the villain squad. You know what I mean? You got James Harden.
Yeah.
You got Kevin Durant. You got Kyrie. Like, I think, to me, it always seemed like the narrative of LeBron changed after he went back to Cleveland and won a championship for them. Like, to me, it seemed like that was the redemption arc.
Sure. Yeah, and I see all that. I think the idea of LeBron James, the concept of who LeBron James is, will always be villainized.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I like Brooklyn being a villain. I think that's they're probably number one. But Trae's top 3,
Oh yeah, 100%.
But Trae isn't disliked by fans. Trae's probably more disliked or villainized by the players. So when I think of a true villain, I think players and fans against. And I haven't met a fan yet that hates Trae Young.
Oh yeah, 100%. Maybe that's because we haven't been to New York, because he is not loved in the Garden.
We haven't been in New York.
Yeah, he had a fan literally spit on him during a game. A fan spat on Trae Young. Like, what the heck, man?
Yeah, maybe I haven't met a Knicks fan. Yeah, that's why.
I think whatever Knicks fans are out there don't like to admit they're Knicks fans.
Right, there we go. Maybe I have, but I haven't been able to notice.
Oh my gosh! And so they do what they do in that Knicks series. They beat the Knicks in 5, and they win the first game by 2. They lose the second game by 9, but from there the series was done. Once the series moved to Atlanta, the series was absolutely over, because they came out, they beat the Knicks by 11 and 17 on their home court, and then they went back to New York, and at that point, like, once the Knicks were down 3-1, it just looked like it was already over. Like, it just looked like the wind was out of their sails.
The hype was. Woo.
Oh yeah, the Hawks demoralized them. Like, absolutely demoralized them. And so then, and then at that point, it was like, okay, that was really fun, but now they're playing Philly. So, they're going to get bounced this round. They're going to get swept, whatever. Except the Atlanta Hawks come out in game 1 and beat the Philadelphia 76ers on their home court, which, Troy, that might have been my favorite game in these playoffs. Like, as far as as far as from beginning to end, that might have been the most fun game to me, because, just watching Trae Young do it again on a bigger stage against that team, it was it was a sight to behold, man.
Yeah. And I'm not trying to diminish Trae Young's performance or the Hawks' performances at all when I say this. So do not interpret it as this, but I always knew both Philly and New York were overrated throughout the regular season.
Oh, for sure. Oh, 100%.
That's not to diminish the Hawks' run, but I'm just saying, if anything, it helped prove my point better that Trae Young exposed both of those franchises for not being as talented as I knew that they already weren't,
Right.
They had a great fourth quarter performance and they kind of just skimmed out and the buzzer sounded and the Sixers were like, wait a minute, we lost.
Right.
That's kind of the vibe I got from that. And oh my gosh. And it was hard to know who to root for too, because I was such a big Trae Young guy, but also the Bucks. I'm a big Giannis guy. So we talked a couple weeks ago back in the finals. Like I didn't know who to root for with Milwaukee and Phoenix, but I also didn't know who to root for Milwaukee and Atlanta because I was so high on Young. But that will not be the last time Trae Young is in the Eastern Conference Finals.
Oh, not at all. Not at all. I think if anything, you assume that they're going to be back real soon. I mean, I don't think this year, I don't think they're going to be back. I think the Eastern Conference is just too stacked at this point. And I think especially with the changes that happened, I think, to assume this team is going to repeat the success that they had this season, is very difficult to do. But listen, they're in the picture. They are very much in the picture. Ultimately, Trae Young suffers that ankle/foot injury against Milwaukee. Ultimately, that team looked overpowered anyway. I mean, there was no realistic scenario that the Atlanta Hawks beat the Milwaukee Bucks. The only way that could have happened was, what if? Which, by the way, Giannis's injury that he sustained in that Hawks series, where he came down on that knee. Just to think that didn't result in the end of his season and that ultimately he came out like it was nothing in the finals and dominated the way he did. That's a whole other story. Yeah. But listen, man, the Atlanta Hawks, there was nothing to be ashamed of. And I don't think there's a coach that earned a job more in the NBA than Nate McMillan did. Like as far as an interim coach to head coach, like just someone that truly earned.
He was an excited coach. Yeah.
Yeah. Like he changed the culture of the team.
Go ahead.
He changed the culture of that franchise like overnight, because with Lloyd Pierce, they didn't look energized. They looked dead on arrival. They were 6 games below 500, but when a guy can come in and make a team, reinvigorate in the middle of the season and go, not just get in the playoff picture, but get to the 5th seed. That's special, man.
Absolutely. And I think, with me being a former high school basketball player, and if I had to throw myself in the NBA right now, he'd be a coach I'd want to play for, right? Nate McMillan, like seriously. A guy that cares about his athletes, wants them, sets them up to succeed in the best way. He's a coach, a real, genuine coach, more than an X and O guy. Yeah, he is a genuine person that cares about the franchise and his athletes, and that is something that I think can get overlooked because it's professional sports. There's a bigger hype to it. You can't just be a good guy and be a good coach, but he does it both. So
yeah, in my opinion, he very well was in the conversation or should have been in the conversation for Coach of the Year. And if you look at just coaching matchups, he had to beat Tom Thibodeau, who is to make that team to make Tom Thibodeau's team look flat out unprepared is something you don't see often, because Tom Thibodeau is a master class of coaches. He the guy who won Coach of the Year. And then you go against Doc Rivers, who is one of the best coaches in the past 20 years of basketball, to simply take one of his best players and now made him look straight up terrified to shoot the basketball. And This man's schemes against Ben Simmons are causing genuine psychological issues for Ben Simmons, that to a point where he looks untradeable, but he needs to be traded at the same time, which is something that is absolutely unreal.
It is.
Yeah. Now, Troy, someone that we haven't really talked about, John Collins. He took a considerable step up this season as well, especially in the playoffs, with the defensive responsibilities that he had, his offensive versatility, kind of seen as Trae Young's Robin. And I think he is going to be the X factor going forward for the Hawks. Because I think, if you're Atlanta, I think you're hopeful that he can be that second star, alongside Trae Young to potentially push for, ultimately a finals run at some point. But if not, I think, I think they're going to have to really do their best to ultimately get an athletic scoring wing at some point. And I think John Collins can be that guy. But I think he's going to be the X factor to their future. What do you say to that, Troy?
Yeah. I see it. I mean, he's a solid power forward who can score in the low block and grab you some good rebounds too. But the Robin to my Batman that I saw the most from this season was from Clint Capella.
Yeah, Clint Capella. Talk about an underrated acquisition that was. Clint Capella's a stud, and people forgot about him quickly because he had he wasn't playing great in Houston, and then they traded him to Atlanta, and then he was out due to injuries for a little bit, but now he's back, and he was proving why he was as good as he was and why he was as touted for as he was. He's like everything you want in a modern day big, except shooting.
Right. Like big time. I guess the traditional / modern day big. Absolutely. Yeah.
The rim runner, rim protector. Yeah.
I was going to say that the rim running was I was most impressed with from this past season.
Yeah, 100%. If you were the general manager of the Atlanta Hawks and you could make one move to turn them into a championship team, what would it be and why?
Ooh, Sean, that is a question to put me on the spot for, man.
Because I have an answer. Can I give you my answer so that gives you some time to think?
Yeah, I can't think too quickly for that. Just give me your answer.
I think they trade for Brandon Ingram, or I would trade for Brandon Ingram.
I like that.
Yeah, if I could change the core of this team to go from Trae Young and John Collins to Trae Young and Brandon Ingram, good luck beating that on the offensive end on a night-to-night basis. Ultimately, the jury's very still much out on what John Collins is ultimately going to be. But where he is right now, he's pretty solid. He's not Brandon Ingram right now. So, you might have to trade some of those other pieces to get Brandon Ingram, maybe a Bogdanovich or something. But listen, man, if I'm looking at pieces that I could add to this roster, potentially, because who knows what happens with the Pelicans? They're a whole different situation. That's just a whole weird thing. But ultimately, I see nothing but good things for this Atlanta Hawks roster, and I think ultimately it's going to come down to what goes around Trae Young and how they develop. So
absolutely, and just for our listeners to hear, because it doesn't happen very often, but about 2 years ago, the Pelicans for Anthony Davis, you and I were talking about that, and I said, still somewhat watch out for New Orleans because Brandon Ingram, watch out, he's going to explode. And you said, oh, Troy, it's Brandon Ingram. What good could he do?
Listen,
but Sean, I knew.
Listen, man, listen, I'll just straight up say it. I was wrong about Brandon Ingram. He absolutely proved that the league was counting him out the first year he was in New Orleans. And, right. I think that everybody was wrong about Lonzo Ball. I think everybody was wrong.
I was wrong about Lonzo Ball. Yes.
See, so that evens all. See, that evens out.
Evens it out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Ultimately, New Orleans might have to be pretty soon. Just talking about
our report card for New Orleans.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that might have to be one at some point too.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not trying to just plug videos here, but I did do a video on them as well. So that is also available on the old From Half Court YouTube channel. But I digress. The Atlanta Hawks, in my opinion, probably the best story from this past season. Well, them and the Phoenix Suns. I mean, there's, Phoenix probably tips it up a little bit. But I mean, listen, they got Chris Paul. You know what I mean? Like, that was kind of expected. Right. Atlanta didn't make a Chris Paul level move. For them to get as far as they did, tip of the old cap to the Atlanta Hawks, 100%. Yeah, but now Troy, it's time that we head over to our brand new segment, Legacies with Troy Sergey. Troy, who are we talking about today?
Yes, absolutely. Looking forward to this all day, actually. And so, if you recall from our last segment, we did the Legacies with Troy with Stephon Marbury. And remember, we have 3 criteria for our legacies. They have to have made an all-star game. Mm-hmm. They can't be in the Hall of Fame, and they cannot still be playing. And their all-star game had to have been in the 2000s, from 2000 to 2009. And today, criteria? We're going to be talking – I guess 4 criteria. Yeah, we'll call it. Or we could just say an all-star in the 2000s and then make it still 3. So,
there you go. There you go.
So today we're going to be talking about one of our own, 6'7" guard from Coatesville, Pennsylvania, Connecticut Husky, Piston God Richard Rip Hamilton.
You mean from the University of Connecticut, number 32, Richard Rip Hamilton. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, sir.
Shout out. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. That was the name. Whenever I heard Richard Rip Hamilton, oh my goodness, those were the days. Mason.
Absolutely.
Mason's still
my
the best
favorite
by the way.
Pistons player of my generation. My favorite Pistons player.
Really?
Maybe actually, no. I'm just gonna say it. My Troy's favorite Piston of all time.
Wow.
Not saying he's the best. But my favorite Piston of all time.
I like it, man. I like it. Yeah. So the legacy of Richard Hamilton. Yeah, absolute stud. I'll let you get this started, and I'll just chime in when I can.
I'll get it started. I'll probably pause and have you take a little some good takes here, but I'll just again, I think it's fair with Sean and my upbringing of being raised in the early and late 2000s as far as when we got into basketball. Mm-hmm. I'm going to personally try to not use any notes, but if we have to pull something up, we will.
Hey, that's okay. I got some stuff. I got some stuff right here if we need it. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to start us off everything I know about Richard Hamilton. So Richard Hamilton from Coatesville, Pennsylvania, definitely a kind of impoverished area. Played AAU ball, great high school player, was AAU teammates with Kobe Bryant. You can check out all the Smoke podcast where Richard Hamilton, special guest with Steven Jackson and Matt Barnes, talking about his AAU experience with playing with Kobe when they were sophomores and juniors in high school. Check that out if you have a chance. Richard Hamilton is one of the best players in the whole state of Pennsylvania. Played in the 1996 All-Star High School McDonald's All-American game, I believe, which is actually at the Palace of Auburn Hills, believe it or not, that year. So he played.
Really? No way.
He was actually at that, a part of that class, that 1996 high school class with Kobe Bryant. So great high school career with him. When it came time to pick where he was going to college, he picked University of Connecticut, kind of seen as a guy who would kind of carry on the legacy of Ray Allen, who left 3 short years, or no, that year there. He might have been teammates with Ray Allen. I don't think so though. Maybe you can check that up. But no matter what, definitely in the somewhat shadow of Ray Allen's legacy at University of Connecticut. Played 3 years there, and then he was drafted with the 7th overall pick in the 1999 NBA draft. The GM for the Washington Wizards was the Michael Jordan, drafted Richard Hamilton with his first round pick. So Richard Hamilton goes to the Washington Wizards with the 7th pick, and kind of struggles a little bit at first, but then really gets the hang of things about midway through his rookie year. Has a great rookie year, probably all rookie, I would assume. Don't know that for sure. And then the following season, or 2 years later, his team, the Washington Wizards, have the number 1 pick in the draft, and they draft Kwame Brown, who we've talked about on this podcast before being one of the biggest busts. And it causes Michael Jordan to go out of retirement. So now Michael Jordan, the guy who drafted Richard Hamilton, is going to be teammates with Richard Hamilton. And Sean, I'm just going to let you on the spot here. What would it be like having the greatest player of all time draft you, and then 2 short years later, he's now teammates with you at the same position?
Not great. I would say. I think if you're to look at it solely in a vacuum and say you get to play with Michael Jordan, I think that would be an honor. But for a guy to come out of retirement and to take your job, especially a guy who has ownership stake in the franchise, a little weird. So, ultimately, obviously that led to, him coming our way, which, hey, I'm not complaining.
Yeah. I'll talk about that real quick. So our big star in the early 2000s was a guy named Jerry Stackhouse. And I actually met Jerry Stackhouse back in 2017 in Grand Rapids. He was the coach of the Raptors 905. So that was a cool experience of mine. But anyways, the Pistons traded Jerry Stackhouse to the Washington Wizards for Richard Hamilton. And Richard Hamilton is now getting paired up with Big Ben Wallace. They bring in Chauncey Billups. And it kind of just seems like that. They have a little culture going on, right? And that little culture gets them to the number 1 seed in the 2002-2003 season, where they have the best record in the NBA. And unfortunately, they get swept in the Eastern Conference Finals by the New Jersey Nets, who would go on to lose to the Lakers in the finals.
Yeah, which, by the way, I mean,
and I think that definitely
Rip being 24 at the time, so super young to come in and be a contributor to a team that was looking to contend. The guy did it quick when he was in the league. He came in and he was right in that picture right away.
Yeah. And that's something that I didn't even think about, is how quick Richard Hamilton became a serviceable, quote unquote, second best option on, we're going to find out in a second, a championship team, right? So yes, Richard Hamilton started the 2003-2004 season, definitely a starter. He's going to be the starting shooting guard for that team. And they have a chip on their shoulder after being swept. And they have a great regular season. I believe they're the 3rd seed that year. They have a nice 5-game series with the Milwaukee Bucks in the first round. And then in the second round, they're paired up with the team that swept them a year earlier, the New Jersey Nets. And Richard Hamilton has a first great couple games. The Pistons go up 2-0 in the series. And then just like that, it's tied 2-2. They lose game 3 and 4. And Richard Hamilton had a good game in game 5, I believe, but they unfortunately lost in triple overtime. But then game 6 rolls around, and the Pistons really struggled the first quarter and some way brought themselves back with their hardcore defense. And then I believe they were up by 2 with maybe 25 seconds left in game 6. Obviously a must-win game. They're down 3-2 in the series, and he hits a huge clutch shot to put them up by 4 with maybe 10 seconds left in the game to go on and beat the New Jersey Nets, and then ultimately win a game 7 in their home building to go to the Eastern Conference Finals. I think we have to maybe stop right there for now, because the Eastern Conference Finals is such a great place to go with Richard Hamilton as far as his big coming out party in the league. So Sean, put yourself in Richard Hamilton's shoes. You just hit that game-winning shot in Game 6 to push a Game 7.
I will put myself in his mask, Troy. I will gladly put myself in Richard Hamilton's
put yourself
mask.
in his mask there, Sean.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Especially coming, especially going into that series against Indiana, which, mind you, at the time, still had Reggie Miller. Especially this series to me felt like the passing of the torch in a way that, like, the way that these guys played were so similar. And Reggie Miller and a lot of guys talk about how much of a nightmare it was to guard Richard Hamilton, because when, what's something that stuck out with me, with a lot of guys back then, was just Richard Hamilton was just such a deadly player off the ball. Like,
right. And coming off those curls was how he was able to get those shots off. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, when I think of like the greatest scorers that were able to do it off the ball, I think of Richard Hamilton with his curls. And to me, like, the only other guy that I can think of that was that active off the ball is Steph Curry. Right. Like, just, he was so, he just was running all the time. A lot of our offense was just setting up Richard Hamilton for a lot of those scoring opportunities. And, he could shoot it from literally anywhere on the court. He was clutch. Just his scoring ability was insane. I think
and I think looking at Steph too, like Richard would come off the curls off the ball and shoot the mid-range game, right? The mid-range game was Rip's big thing. Steph Curry kind of expanded that off the ball, those curls to the three-point line.
Right.
So definitely a little bit different there. But Rip, at the time, he was Reggie Miller's Y2K, right? His shadow coming up.
Yeah, 100%.
So the fact that they were paired up against each other, Richard Hamilton being the younger version of Reggie Miller, had to have been quite a fun Eastern
They went to
Conference
war,
Finals.
man. They went to war.
Yeah, they did. And yes, Pacers take Game 1, Pistons take Game 2. Richard Hamilton was the one who caught the ball after Tayshaun Prince's big block. And then Rip's coming out party was Game 3, 4, and especially 5. Richard Hamilton, he was their number one option that series.
Mm-hmm.
There's no doubt about it. The Pistons' number one option in that series was Richard Hamilton.
100%.
And then they win Game 6, and now they're in the NBA Finals, where Richard Hamilton is paired up against Kobe Bryant in the NBA Finals.
The Mamba.
And so Game 1, Pistons win. That's more Chauncey Billups' big game. Yeah. And of course, they lose in overtime against the Lakers in Game 2. But then Game 3 happens, and Game 3. I think 87% of the time when a playoff series is tied at 1-1, the winner of Game 3 wins the series.
Yep.
And that proved everything right there. Richard Hamilton, I think, scored maybe 32, 33 points.
He put up 31 points.
31 points. Absolutely incredible performance. If you have time, watch Game 3 Richard Hamilton highlights from the NBA Finals, because it is worth your time. And of course, they win Game 4 and Game 5. And now Richard Hamilton, at age 24, 25 now?
Yeah, he was at the time of winning the NBA championship, he was 26. 26.
Richard Hamilton at age 26 is now an NBA champion.
Mm-hmm. And one of the main reasons why we won the championship.
Yeah, we don't get past Indiana, and we don't win Game 3, which we probably lose the series without Richard Hamilton.
Yeah.
In those two series against the Pacers and the Lakers. So that right there, to be honest, Sean, is a huge part of Richard Hamilton's legacy, is those two series.
Oh yeah.
Then of course, he has a great career. He makes an All-Star game in 2006, I believe. Of course, goes to the finals in 2005 with the Pistons. They lost to the Spurs in Game 7. Mm-hmm. Has a great series against Miami in 2005 and 6. And then, the Pistons kind of, they went to the Eastern Conference Finals those years to come, but they just weren't the same team. And what was cool, I'm talking post now, Chauncey Billups leaving, is he still stuck around.
Yeah.
And that such a tough year where they were supposed to, quote unquote, compete for a championship with Allen Iverson. They're doing some experimenting with roster, who we have on the court,
which people forget. Like, even though
he volunteered to be the sixth man that year, because they wanted to give Stuckey more minutes, because they thought he was the next Billups, and of course, Iverson had too big of an ego to sit the bench. So Rip Hamilton volunteered to come off the bench that year as the captain, as the seasoned vet, as the champion. So that speaks volume to his character. Go ahead.
Yeah. And by the way, when they brought in Allen Iverson, the initial thought was kind of that he was kind of brought in to build around kind of like Richard Hamilton was kind of the thinking was that they were going to ultimately kind of have Rip as the centerpiece, Rip and Iverson as kind of that core, and just to see where it goes. Obviously that did not work out, and it flamed out very quickly, and some bridges were burnt, and ultimately it just did not, like we said, did not go well. But at the end of the day, man, like, just there was a reason why, and not only did he make the All-Star game in 05-06, he made it 3 years in a row. He made it in 06-07. He made it in 07-08. This guy was among the best in the league at what he did. And when I think of Troy, I'm not sure if there's a play that sticks out for you of like favorite Rip Hamilton plays of all time. For me, I think 04-05. It was Celtics Pistons at the Celtics. Richard Hamilton hits a baseline game winner over Paul Pierce in the final seconds. I remember screaming and getting so hype in that moment. I just remember Rip Hamilton just had the ice in his veins, dude.
Absolutely. I got two memories to go along. One's a personal memory, and one of them is definitely probably more of a legacy memory. And the legacy one is 51 points in Madison Square Garden. I believe that was maybe 05-06 as well. But Richard Hamilton put 50 plus in the Garden, which is pretty impressive. Not a lot of players can do that. And that's another one on YouTube you can check out is Rip Hamilton's highlights there. But the personal memory was when I was in sixth grade. I was 11 years old. And the Detroit Pistons were doing a statewide camp earlier that summer. And Pistons did a camp in Marquette. And kind of more of an expensive camp, but the upside to that was if you did, your participation trophy at the end was a free ticket to a game that upcoming season. So they give us a list of about 10 games to choose from. We couldn't choose from all 41, and I kind of wanted to pick the worst team to ensure a Pistons win, and I picked the Warriors. And that was Steph Curry's rookie year. So I got to see Steph Curry play as a rookie in person, and that was so awesome. And where I'm from, Marquette, you can't just go to a Pistons game very often. So it was kind of more of a 1 year voyage, once a year voyage to go to a Pistons game growing up as a kid. And I picked the Warriors, and Rip was out. I think he got injured the first game of the year, if I recall. This is 2009, 2010 season. First year with Ben Gordon, Charlie Villanueva. So Rip gets hurt game one against Memphis, which gives Ben Gordon more playing time, unfortunately. And then Rip was out for probably, I think, 4 or 5 games. And 4 or 5 weeks. So probably, if you do the math, that's probably 15, 20 games. And I remember, not having any high expectations, my favorite players out. And then, you've been to a Pistons game before, how before they run out of the tunnel. Yeah, before they go out of the tunnel, right, for the first time in warm-ups, they show the team in the locker room, just getting pumped up, ready to head on the floor. And guess who I saw in full uniform? Richard Hamilton. He was back for the first time at the game that I was at against the Warriors.
Oh, heck
and
yeah.
He went on a show and he scored, I think, 25 plus that game, maybe even 30 plus. to beat the Golden State Warriors, to beat rookie Steph Curry, first time in Detroit. And that was a memory I'll always remember. And just, I can't believe I forgot this one, but the very next year, I went to Pistons and Wizards, and that was John Wall's rookie year. And it was a really close game the whole game. That was Tracy McGrady's year for the Pistons. And it was a really close game at the end, and it was tied. And what's that guy's name? Blott. Who's that? Doesn't matter. Blott, I think Andrew Blott. I don't know. On the Wizards. He missed the game-winning shot, so the game went to overtime. And Rip scored 11 straight points in OT to win the game for the Pistons. 11 straight. He scored all the Pistons points.
That's just stuff he did all the time. Like, that was the crazy thing.
Yeah.
Like, that's just what he did, and it was just nuts.
From City, I saw an amazing Richard Hamilton performance that I will never forget. And I love Rip. He's my favorite Piston.
Yeah, absolutely, man. He's a guy that I'm not sure if he's going to end up being a Hall of Famer.
Right.
The odds of him becoming a Hall of Famer, I'm not entirely sure. But listen, I will say this, especially in the 2000s, had one of the best careers, in my opinion, among a lot of those guys. On Pro Basketball Reference, they have a statistic titled Hall of Fame probability, and unfortunately, Richard Hamilton's Hall of Fame probability is 1.8%. So they do not see a Hall of Fame career. I mean, unfortunately, he really only played, he played 14 seasons. But
yeah, we forgot about his last year with the Chicago Bulls, with Derrick Rose's MVP year. Yeah, last 2 years. Yeah. So he played with MVP Derrick Rose. He was kind of the sixth man on that roster who made it to the Eastern Conference Finals and lost to the Miami Heat, of course, who would go on to play the Dallas Mavericks in one of them and lose. But yeah, Rip was a big part of that MVP year with the Bulls.
Yeah, part of me wonders, what if they won that 04-05, that 04-05 team won the championship?
Yeah.
Whether that would have boosted his chances of being a Hall of Famer. Ultimately, he is most definitely going to go down as one of the all-time great Pistons. I mean, up there with, the greatest shooting guards with Joe Dumars, and, just his legacy in Detroit is never going to be in question. Right. But I think,
and I was just going to add that. Go ahead. No, finish.
Yeah, no, but I would just say, he's a guy that throughout the league is well respected. He's well liked. I don't think I don't think he gets talked about enough nowadays. And I think he was very influential on the game. I mean, Devin Booker said one of his favorite players growing up was Richard Hamilton. So there's a lot of guys that are playing nowadays that are influenced by his game. So yeah, man, he might not have been like the sexiest offensive player, but he was one of the most effective, especially at his height. Especially at his height.
Yeah. And the big thing I was going to say was in 2017, halftime of Pistons and Celtics, I believe, at the Palace, the Palace's final year, they decided to retire Richard Hamilton's number 32. So when you say that his legacy will forever be engraved in Pistons fans, that is 100% true, because
100%.
No Piston will ever wear the number 32 again in honor of Richard Hamilton.
Do you think do you think they should retire Rasheed Wallace's number?
The fact that they have Vinnie Johnson and even I love Lambeer, but even Lambeer.
Well, I mean, he won 2 champions. I mean, he was, listen, he's just known for being a dirty player. He's an underrated good player.
But I see a lot of similarities with him and Sheed's game.
But that's kind of the weird thing, though. Which number do you retire? Do you retire 36? Because he won the championship in 30.
30, yeah.
You know what I mean? So
But he probably had the better career in 36.
Yeah, but I mean, he might have had the better career,
Yeah,
but he
I don't
brought
know.
the ring home.
That's a decision for not us to make. Rightfully so. But
right, but if it was up to you, Troy, yes or no, does Rasheed Wallace get his number retired? 3, 2,
no.
1. Okay, there it is. There it is. Yeah, unfortunately I agree. I wish he could have. You know, ultimately I wish Tayshaun could have too. But I mean, obviously you can only retire so many numbers. And you know, if there's 3 guys to get retired numbers from that team, it's Ben Wallace, it's Chauncey Billups, most certainly Richard Hamilton, 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. And those 3 have all been retired in the past 5 years. So
yep, I think they got retired the same season, right? Or were they different seasons? I know Ben and Chauncey were the same season.
Yeah, Rip was the next.
Oh, okay, that's right. Okay, yep, yeah, cool. Well, Troy, that was a great deep dive. I enjoyed that one. That was a good trip down memory lane.
Loved it.
I just watched that baseline game winner in Boston. I found that on YouTube while we were talking. Yeah. Oh my gosh, dude, so good. So good. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
I'm going to go and watch Richard Hamilton's 51-point game at Madison Square Garden after this.
That's a good call, man. That's a good call. You should too. You should find it on YouTube. But with that, you should also look at From Half Court on YouTube, because that is the wrap of this week's episode of From Half Court. If you liked it, be sure to give us a like, give us a subscribe, give us a follow, leave us a good rating in all your podcast services of your liking. Follow Troy on Twitter at TroySergey44, and you can follow me at Sean Halfcourt. But hey, thank you so much for watching. We are a month away from the basketball season, so things are only going to get crazier. So be sure to stick with us and listen, because there's going to be a lot happening here in the coming weeks. I don't want to make any predictions, Troy, but something tells me in my gut that next week we're going to be talking about a big story on From Half Court. So I'm excited to see what that ends up being. I don't know what it is. I'm not saying, obviously I don't have any insider information. I'm just a guy from Michigan. But listen, for whatever reason, I feel like something's going to happen. But hey, thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you next time from Half Court.